Hello, this guide focuses primarily on Cortex tech for all that glitters. However, the principles can easily be applied to other maps as well. Keep in mind that the tech spot is highly flexible, so treat this guide as a foundation. Experiment and adapt to find the strategies that works best for your playstyle. As a tech player, your role is to provide T2 constructors to everyone, scale your economy and support your team. There is no room for a "you didn't pay so you don't get a constructor" mentality. The only exceptions are when someone has already built their own, or if they are about to lose their base. In this case, a few units will likely help you more, and you can send them a constructor later. Supporting your team effectively comes down to experience and game sense. You will need to know when to stop echoing and start producing the right units for the situation. Often, this means building specialized units like sharpshooters or sheldons to harass enemies, or assembling a strong fighting squad to break the enemy front and secure the reclaim. At times, it could involve early fiends to handle leaks, a T1 push, or even an air switch to overwhelm the enemy air player. You might go for T3 units or execute a cheese strategy like a nuke rush. There are plenty of options, but they all share one key principle. You need to commit. Stop echoing at the right time and follow through with your plan. If you hesitate, you risk falling behind in both army strength and economy. If your advance stalls or you have reclaimed a large amount of metal, that's the time to scale your economy further or pivot to a different strategy. Of course, there are times where your team is doing well without much help and you can scale your eco freely, but realistically you shouldn't rely on that happening. Okay, here is my build order. Start by building 2 mexes and the solar. When the solar reaches 30%, switch to building the third mex, then finish the solar. Next, add 2 more mexes, a wind turbine, another solar and a bot lab. After that, have your commander build 2 more solars and 10 winds. If you notice you are about to overflow energy, usually when you have around 4 winds, add an energy storage. In the bot lab, queue up 1 or 2 constructors, depending on whether the air players need one, a res bot and a grunt. If the enemy is very aggressive, prioritize the grunt before the res bot or even make additional grunts. Boost your lab with the commander whenever you have spare energy. Cycle your commander between building solars and assisting unit production. The first constructor builds the last mex, comes back to build the con turret, and then starts on the T2 lab. Meanwhile, the commander finishes the 10 winds, reclaims the bot lab, and adds more energy production. If you are still overflowing, add more energy storage. The res bot should go around the map and reclaim the metal spots and then come back to your base. Once this is underway, ask your team to help fund the T2 lab. Build a single T2 constructor and upgrade 2 mexes, assisting with both commander and the T1 constructor. At this stage, ask the air player for a light transport. Share the first T2 constructor with a teammate, then queue up 7 more and a twitcher. Your T1 constructor should assist the lab while the commander focuses on building winds and solars based on your energy needs. If you start overflowing energy, add more storage. Use the res bot to reclaim solars for metal to fund winds and constructors, but avoid reclaiming them if wind is poor and your energy reserves are low. Distribute your T2 constructors to the entire team using your transport. Before sharing a constructor, queue up 3 mexes in your ally base to ensure it doesn't sit idle once delivered. If you have plenty of energy and some spare metal, you can prioritize building a third T2 mex before distributing all the constructors. Place the blueprint and focus it using a con turret and your commander. The last T2 constructor is yours. Send it to upgrade the faraway mex and assist with your commander and the T1 constructor. Meanwhile, use your res bot to reclaim the T2 lab. The twitcher builds 2 con turrets, ideally with at least 1 unupgraded mex in range, and then assist the T2 constructor. Once the con turrets are complete, use your transport to move your T2 constructor around. If you bank some energy, consider building 5 sheldons, a radar and a jammer to send to the front before reclaiming the T2 lab. You can micro the sheldons yourself while your economy develops, or share them with a teammate who looks ready to handle them. After upgrading your mexes, your next priorities are fusion, 2 advanced converters, a second fusion, anti-stealth and anti-nuke. If you are stalling on energy while building the first fusion, add a few solars and reclaim them once the fusion is finished. With one fusion, you can safely add more build power. Stick to around 10 con turrets. Building more will likely cause you to stall on metal during fusion production. Reclaim your winds, solars and any excess energy storages. One storage is sufficient at this stage. Always build anti-stealth early. It's inexpensive and ensures you don't miss spy bots. Delay anti-nuke only if your team is under heavy pressure. Anti-nukes won't save you if you are overrun by enemy units. Plus, if the enemy is pushing hard, they are less likely to be rushing nukes. Take advantage of the Twitch's ability to build fiends, which are excellent for defending against T1 units. If a teammate is struggling, produce a few of them and share them to help push back the enemy. Twitchers can also build termites if you need to secure the heals. This flexibility is a major advantage of Cortex. You can safely reclaim the T2 lab while still producing units when needed. Once your baseline build is complete, it's time to decide your next move. If your team is pushing hard and the enemy looks overwhelmed, shift to unit production to support the attack. There is no need to drag out the game if you can secure a win. Alternatively, if the front is a stalemate and both teams are entrenched, focus on scaling your economy to make a decisive impact. If your team is losing, maybe because one side has broken, you need to focus on stabilizing the situation. Prioritize making units to push back the enemies, reclaim the wrecks, rebuild mexes and set up static defenses to stop enemy spam. Don't worry about being outscaled. If you're about to lose, the Echo Comic Online won't matter anyway. So, how do you switch to units? It really depends on the situation, but here are a few options. First, you can go for T1 air after completing your first fusions. Build an air lab, add some build power and produce around 20 bombers, 20 fighters and few scouts. Coordinate with your air player and spread out your bombers to avoid losing them to a single flag. If you are unsure how to control air units effectively, I will link my air guide in the description. Another option is Stride Grand Spam, especially if your front is already pushing hard. You can mix in a few anti-air bots to counter enemy shuriken. If you have 5 fusions, consider going for Shiva spam. Build a gantry, 2 or 3 Junos, a T1 bot lab and start mass producing Shivas. They are excellent against T2 units unless the enemy has too many sharpshooters, starlights or pulsars. Be sure to have a few res bots to reclaim wrecks and ask your teammates to support you with T1 spam. Another 5 fusion strategy is to produce around 10 Twitchers and send them to the front. You can use them to build static defenses while continuing to scale your economy. Alternatively, build a T1 constructor at the front to create a forward T2 lab. Then assist it with your Twitchers. This works particularly well if you are pushing with slow, powerful units like Mammoths or Tremors. If you want to try something riskier, you could build a nuke to target an exposed base or army. Other creative options include drops, Scatulus or any unconventional strategy you can come up with. Ultimately, the right approach depends on what's happening on the map, so adapt to the situation and commit to your plan. Whatever strategy you choose, your goal should either be to cripple their backline or push back their frontline to secure the reclaim. Just be careful not to overextend or you risk losing the advantage you have worked to build. If your team is pushing alongside you, this is often the moment when the match can be decided. However, a common scenario is that your team uses your push as an opportunity to focus on their own scaling. When you notice this happening, it's important to stop pushing and switch to defense. From this position, you have 2 options for scaling your economy. If you start floating metal, you can queue up dozens of fusions at your base while continuing to focus on pushing. This approach allows you to steadily grow your economy without starving your unit production. The second option is to stop producing unit, reclaim your labs and shift focus entirely to building advanced fusions. Just keep in mind that advanced fusions are worth it only if you had over 20 con turrets to build them without stalling. That's why I prioritize regular fusions early, they require far less build power. When it comes to late game units, remember this, it's better to have 20 early Shivas than 1 late behemoth. A behemoth can easily be countered if you overextend, it can be flanked or degunned. While a powerful unit might work against less experienced players, competent opponents will handle it easily. I haven't done precise math on the most optimal units for a given economy, but here is my general sense for T3 production. At 5 to 6k energy, focus on Shiva spam. At 9 to 12, you can add Grand spam, a few demos or catapults, or even additional fusions. At over 12k, it's time to switch to Karganev spam. If you are no longer making units, this is also the point to transition to advanced fusions. These benchmarks assume you are not behind. Printing cheap T3 units won't work if enemy is producing expensive ones at the same rate. The key is to start early to gain tempo, allowing you to snowball into a continuous stream of stronger units without letting up the pressure. Flooding enemies with units often catches them off guard, as they tend to expect T3s in batches. When they clear a wave, they often shift back to echoing, which is where your constant pressure can break them. If you are slow pushing with catapults, make sure you got T1 spam, anti-stealth and anti-nuke to support them. Without this, enemies might EMP or nuke your catapults, ending the push entirely. Finally, when it comes to behemoths or juggernauts, focus on building one with proper support rather than several that get deganned for free. Proper support includes heavy T1 spam, T1 air scout spam for radar and vision, and Junos to clear enemy jammers. You need to reveal enemy commanders before they get close enough to degun your heavy hitter. I should also mention a few T2 options. With 5 fusions, you can comfortably produce any T2 unit, but your choice depends on what the enemies are fielding. If they are relying on long-range T2 units like artillery, Sheldons or static artillery, you will need high HP units to push through their lines. Tigers, Sumors or Mammoths are great options for this. Adding spy bots can also help prevent them from retreating effectively. If they have already moved to heavy hitters like Starlight, Snipers or Pulsars, you will need a combination of spam and units that can outrange them. Missile Track, Missile Bots or Tremors work well here, paired with a few bulky units to hold off the anti-spam rush. In general, if you are committing to T2 units, it's crucial to time your push correctly. Aim to hit when they have just started building advanced defenses. If you miss that window, it becomes much harder to make a significant impact. Alright, there are 2 more things I wanted to mention. First, practice your build in a skirmish mode. Start a match with no enemies, give yourself a few res bots and some units to reclaim to simulate payments from your teammates. Keep in mind that in a real match you will often receive plenty of excess energy from your team, so it usually runs more smoothly than playing solo. It's also worth testing how quickly you can get specific units to the front line. Some units are incredibly effective if they arrive early, but lose their impact once enemies have a counter ready. Oh, and if you are wondering why I'm talking about 5 fusions, it's because you should get them around 20-minute marks and it's really time for you to come online. Second, take advantage of the insert command and skip command keybinds to adjust your build queue without redoing it from scratch. If you are using the grid layout, these are bound to space for insert and N for skip. One more important point to consider is your base layout. Never build your fusions next to converters. It makes it much easier for enemies to blow you up. Also, keep your contours spread out early on, and later try to organize them into a few separate blocks. Losing all your build power at once can be devastating, but if only health is taken out, you will be able to rebuild much more quickly. Alright, that's going to wrap up this guide. The tech position is incredibly flexible, so there is no single best way to play it. It takes some experience to figure out how to use your economy effectively. I recommend using this guide as a baseline and adapting it to hit specific timings or achieve certain goals, depending on the current meta. If you'd like to see this build in action, I've got a second channel with plenty of eco gameplay videos, feel free to check those out. And if you found this guide helpful, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Thanks for watching and I will see you next time.